Every decision in life comes down to a moment, a single choice. For Katrina Williams, that moment arrived in a dark, narrow hallway, with a man's angry hand wrapped tightly around her arm. "You're going to do exactly what I tell you, you insolent little black girl, or you can pack your things." Manager Franklin Torres grabbed Katrina's arm, dragging her toward the back of the Elegance restaurant, away from the security cameras. Katrina Williams, 28, never imagined that her 2-year job at Chicago's most prestigious restaurant would end like this. She was being humiliated because she refused to accept a bribe from an influential customer. Senator Richardson had left a heavy envelope with $5,000 inside. The price for her silence. The price to forget that she saw Franklin tampering with receipts and cooking the books. She simply looked him in the eye and said, "No, please, Mr. Torres, let go of my arm," she said with a calmness that further irritated the manager. "I will not accept dirty money, period. That money is illegal and I will not be a part of it." Franklin growled, pushing her roughly against the cold wall of the narrow hallway. "Listen here, you stuck-up little black girl. You think you're better than everyone else? You think you can lecture me?" His face was bright red with anger, a vein throbbing in his temple. "You're just a waitress I took pity on and hired. People like you should be grateful to have a job in a place like this. Now, take the money and forget what you saw." What Franklin didn't know was that Katrina had already recorded every single word he just said. Her cell phone was hidden deep inside her apron pocket, recording everything since the start of her shift. Over the past 6 months, she had systematically and methodically documented every racist comment, every corrupt scheme, and every abuse of power she had witnessed in that place. This wasn't a job. It was a project. "Let's have a private chat in the bathroom," Franklin whispered, squeezing her arm even tighter, the pain sharp and immediate. "Maybe you'll understand your position here better after I explain to you exactly how things work in my restaurant." Katrina took a deep breath, maintaining the composure she had learned over years of dealing with men like Franklin. Men who confuse their social status with moral superiority. "You don't want to do that, Mr. Torres. I promise you, you really do not want to go down that path." "Oh, I don't." He laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. "And who's going to stop me? Your little husband? That failed mechanic who can't even give you a decent life and makes you work 2 shifts a day." That's when a cold voice cut through the air like a blade of ice. A voice that instantly silenced Franklin's pathetic laugh. "I would say you should let go of my wife immediately." Franklin spun around and paled. From the dark corner near the back entrance, a tall man in an impeccable, tailored suit was walking toward them. His eyes were cold as ice, and 2 intimidatingly large men accompanied him a few steps behind, creating a human wall. "Alessandro Moretti," Franklin muttered, the name leaving his mouth like a prayer. He recognized the name that everyone in town knew and feared, even if they had never seen his face. In 3 years of marriage, she had never revealed at work that her husband was one of the most powerful and influential people in Chicago. She enjoyed her independence, building her own reputation and success away from the shadow of his influence. But she had called Alessandro 2 hours earlier when she realized the bribe situation was escalating dangerously and she needed the final piece of evidence. Alessandro stopped barely a meter away from Franklin, who was still holding Katrina's arm as if he were paralyzed. "You have 3 seconds to explain why you're touching my wife." Franklin let go of Katrina as if she were on fire. I didn't know. It was just a misunderstanding. A simple argument between employees." "A misunderstanding?" Alessandro tilted his head, his tone dangerously calm, almost clinical. "You called my wife an insolent little black girl and dragged her to a place without cameras. That seems pretty intentional to me, Franklin. That seems like a pattern of abuse of power." Katrina watched the scene with growing, quiet satisfaction. For months, Franklin had treated her as if she were inferior, as if she were nothing more than an unimportant waitress. He acted as if people like her should accept any humiliation in silence. Now, seeing that arrogant man tremble before her husband, she realized that her strategic patience was about to yield far greater rewards than any direct confrontation ever could. Franklin instinctively backed away, stumbling over his own legs. "I didn't know she was your wife, Mr. Moretti. It's nothing serious. Just a little internal dispute." Katrina watched Franklin crumble before her eyes. For 2 years, that man had treated her like trash, making racist comments disguised as jokes, touching her back inappropriately, and cutting her pay whenever she questioned anything. He saw her as a disposable black waitress with no power and no importance. "Look, Mr. Moretti." Franklin tried to regain some composure, leaning against the cold wall. "Your wife has been problematic lately, questioning procedures, refusing to follow simple orders. She is a difficult employee." "Orders like accepting bribes?" Katrina interrupted, pulling her cell phone from her apron pocket, holding it up like a piece of evidence in court. "Like this recording of you offering me $5,000 to forget about Senator Richardson's fake receipts and stop my investigation?" The color drained completely from Franklin's face. You recorded me? You had no right to record me in my own restaurant." Katrina smiled for the first time that night. It was a look of cold, perfect triumph. "Franklin, over the past 6 months, you've been recorded 43 times, photographed 27 times, and documented in 62 detailed reports that I sent weekly to my husband. This wasn't random surveillance. It was a federal case file." For months, while Franklin humiliated her daily, Katrina had methodically built a complete dossier of the restaurant's illegal activities. Every bribed customer, every tampered receipt, every racist comment, every inappropriate touch. All carefully recorded, dated, and cataloged. "Did you really think that a black woman with a degree in business administration from Northwestern University, who speaks 4 languages, and has a master's degree in hotel management, was working here as a waitress because she had no other choice in the world?" Katrina tilted her head, her polite tone masking her terrifying satisfaction. Franklin opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. But you never said. I just assumed." "You thought what, Franklin?" Katrina pressed, taking a step forward. "You thought that because I'm black, I should accept any humiliation in silence? That because I wear a waitress uniform, I couldn't possibly have an education or connections? You assumed my worth based on your prejudice, and that was your biggest mistake." Alessandro watched his wife with obvious pride. When she had suggested working undercover to investigate the activities of the restaurant, which he suspected was being used for a massive money laundering operation, he had hesitated. But Katrina had insisted. She wanted to prove she could contribute to the family business using her own expertise and her unique ability to be invisible to prejudiced men like Franklin. "During these 2 years, you didn't just humiliate me, Franklin," Katrina continued, her voice gaining strength. "You humiliated Maria in the kitchen, saying that people from Mexico are only good for washing dishes. You harassed Jessica the sommelier because you thought she should be grateful for the opportunity. And you systematically stole from customers who trusted you by altering their receipts." Franklin tried one last desperate gambit. "Wait, I can explain all this. We can come to an agreement, Mr. Moretti. I have valuable information about other restaurants, about competitors. I can testify." Alessandro smiled, a cold, predatory smile. "Franklin, you're offering information to the man who has known everything that goes on in this city for years. My wife wasn't here to uncover secrets. She was here to document evidence. The difference is crucial, and you are finally beginning to understand the magnitude of your situation." He hadn't been caught red-handed. He had been studied, cataloged, and documented like a laboratory specimen for months. Every moment of arrogance was a new piece of evidence against him. "Senator Richardson will be delighted to know that your transactions have been recorded," Katrina continued casually, flipping a page in her folder. "As will Judge Morrison, Congressman Walsh, and that construction mogul you've been facilitating for over a year. All your high-status friends are about to hear about your incompetence." Franklin felt his legs buckle. Each name Katrina mentioned represented not just a lost client, but a powerful person who would now become his enemy, exposed because of his incompetence. "Please," he whispered, the arrogant tone completely gone, replaced by pure terror. I have a family, children. I have a young son. Funny you should mention family, Alessandro said softly, his voice dangerously low, because that's exactly what you should have remembered before you laid your hands on mine. What Franklin didn't know, and what Katrina was about to reveal, was that the last 6 months of documentation had not only exposed a corrupt manager. They had mapped out an entire network of corruption connecting politicians, judges, and businessmen in the city, using Elegance as the hub for their illicit transactions. Each new humiliation Franklin had imposed only strengthened something within Katrina that he had never been able to see. A quiet determination fueled by the very injustice he tried to normalize. She was building not only a case against him, but against an entire system that people like Franklin represented and protected. As Franklin begged for mercy, Katrina calmly opened her phone. Franklin, do you remember when you said I should be thankful for having a job? Katrina reading through her phone, specifically on March 23rd, when Senator Richardson arrived with that campaign check that you illegally deposited into the restaurant's personal account. That was a bad day for you. Franklin tried one last desperate gambit, pulling his cell phone from his pocket. I'm going to call Senator Richardson right now. He'll take care of this. He has influence in this town. Connections you can't even imagine, Moretti. Alessandro and Katrina exchanged an amused glance. Franklin truly believed that his political connections could save him from an investigation that had already involved the FBI for months. Go ahead and call, Alessandro said softly. But you should know that Senator Richardson is at this very moment being arrested at his residence for money laundering and tax evasion. He can't take your call. The color drained completely from Franklin's face. That's impossible. You're lying. Operation Clean Plate, Katrina said casually, turning a page in the folder. 6 months of joint investigation between the FBI, the IRS, and the Chicago police. 12 politicians, 8 judges, 15 businessmen, all connected through the transactions you facilitated here at Elegance. You were the gatekeeper. Franklin staggered, leaning against the wall for support. For months he had felt untouchable, protected by a network of corrupt politicians he considered his friends, powerful men who greeted him by name, who gave him generous bribes, who made him feel important. Judge Morrison? Franklin whispered, the name a plea. Arrested 2 hours ago, Alessandro replied, as were Congressman Walsh and that construction businessman you admired so much. Your entire network is being dismantled right now. Katrina continued reading through the folder, each page representing months of meticulous work. Photos of suspicious checks, recordings of conversations, transfer records, even handwriting analyses proving Franklin's forgeries. You know what impresses me the most, Franklin? Katrina paused at a specific photo, a copy of an official form. In this document, you forged Alessandro's own signature. The man standing next to you right now has known your every move for months, and you had the audacity to forge his name. That's an insult we simply cannot ignore. It was then that Franklin realized the true, horrifying magnitude of his situation. He hadn't just stolen from clients or accepted bribes. He had also stolen from the most dangerous man in Chicago, documenting every crime while believing he was being clever and superior. Please, Franklin collapsed to his knees. I have young children, an ex-wife who depends on alimony. I can give everything back. I can testify against the others. I can be an informant. Testify. Katrina tilted her head. Franklin, you don't understand. We don't need your testimony. We have 2,000 pages of solid evidence, high-definition recordings, forensic analysis. You're not a source of information. You're the end product. You are the piece of bait that caught the bigger fish. For months, while humiliating Katrina on a daily basis, Franklin had been studied like a laboratory specimen. Every movement analyzed, every crime documented, every connection mapped. He thought he was controlling a submissive black waitress, when in fact he was being manipulated by a federal operation that used him as bait for much bigger fish. Michael, Alessandro called, and the elegant man in the dark suit stepped forward in the hallway. This is Michael Santos, my advisor. He is also a licensed federal prosecutor and was coordinating the operation with my wife. Franklin looked at Michael, vaguely recognizing his face. You've dined here several times. I remember serving you wine. 43 times in the last 6 months, Michael confirmed, smiling. Always watching, always recording. You served wine to the man who was building your criminal case, Franklin. And you were always very polite, advising me on the best vintage. The irony was brutal and absolute. For months, Franklin had treated these powerful men with reverence, believing they admired his savvy in business. In fact, they were studying him like a predator studies its prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Katrina documented every transaction, Michael continued, but we needed something more. We needed you to commit a crime in front of Alessandro himself. A crime that couldn't be denied or minimized. Senator Richardson's bribe, Katrina explained. $5,000 offered in front of 3 hidden cameras and 2 federal witnesses. The perfect crime to close your case. You walked right into our trap, Franklin. Franklin finally understood. The bribe situation had not been a coincidence or an unforeseen opportunity. It had been carefully orchestrated to force him to commit a federal crime in the presence of indisputable witnesses. You gave us exactly what we needed, Alessandro said calmly. A white man in a position of power, systematically humiliating a qualified black woman while simultaneously stealing from clients and facilitating political corruption. The perfect crime with the most despicable motives for the press to follow. Michael opened his own briefcase, revealing a stack of already signed arrest warrants. Franklin Torres, you're under arrest for money laundering, tax evasion, racial discrimination in the workplace, and conspiracy to commit federal fraud. You will be taken into federal custody. As Michael read his rights, Franklin looked one last time at Katrina. The woman he had treated like trash for 2 years stood there, calm and dignified, watching the fall of the empire of corruption he had helped build. What Franklin would never discover was that his arrest would be only the first domino to fall in an operation that would completely transform the political landscape of Chicago, and that the little black waitress he had so despised was about to become one of the most influential women in the city, not out of revenge, but out of meticulously executed justice. As Michael cuffed Franklin, a deafening sound of sirens filled the air outside the restaurant. Through the windows, Franklin could see a fleet of FBI cars surrounding the elegance. Federal agents were entering the front door with search and seizure warrants. No, Franklin whispered, reality finally hitting him like a hammer. You can't do this to me. I cooperated with you. I facilitated the deals. I was a key part of the network. Facilitated. Katrina chuckled softly, a laugh that cut Franklin deeper than any scream. Alessandro signaled to his men, who immediately began escorting Franklin toward the waiting federal agents. But Katrina raised her hand, asking for one final, devastating moment. Before you walk out of our lives forever, Franklin, I want you to understand exactly what happened here. She opened the phone one last time, revealing not only documents, but photographs that made Franklin stagger. The first photo showed Franklin at a nearby bar 2 months ago, bragging to other managers about how he kept the colored employees in line. The second showed him meticulously altering credit card receipts with a tiny pen. The third captured the exact moment he had placed his hand on Jessica, the sommelier, against her will. 43 restaurants in Chicago, Katrina continued calmly. All of them received copies of this evidence last night, along with a letter detailing your specific methods of discrimination and corruption. You will never work in this city again, Franklin. Franklin's face drained of color. His career in the restaurant industry wasn't just over. It was completely destroyed. No reputable establishment in the city would ever hire him again. Your ex-wife also received a complete copy, Michael added casually. Of particular interest was the documentation of the $50,000 you embezzled from alimony funds over the past 2 years. She received the full file this morning. Franklin spun around. Jennifer can't. She won't. She will never believe you. Actually, she already filed for a full review of the divorce settlement this morning, Alessandro informed him. It was then that Franklin realized it wasn't just his job or his freedom. It was his family, his reputation, his entire identity being systematically demolished piece by piece. Please, he begged one last time, tears beginning to form. My children, they'll grow up knowing their father is a criminal. It will ruin them. Your children will grow up knowing that actions have consequences, Katrina replied firmly, without a shred of pity. And maybe that will prevent them from becoming men like you. When the federal agents finally took Franklin away, Katrina turned to Alessandro. Has the press been informed of the scale of this operation? Channel 7 News goes on air in an hour, Alessandro confirmed. Operation Clean Plate, corruption network dismantled by undercover investigation. Your photo will be on the front page of the Chicago Tribune tomorrow. This is your victory, my dear. Michael approached with a tablet showing the headlines that were already beginning to appear online. Heroin waitress exposes million-dollar corruption scheme, and black woman subverts white power system in Chicago dominated social media. 12 politicians, 8 judges, 15 businessmen, Katrina murmured, watching the list of arrests that continued to grow in real time. 2 years of work, 6 months of intensive documentation, and Franklin Torres was the arrogant key that opened all the doors for us. 6 months later, Katrina stood on the main stage of the Chicago Convention Center before an audience of over 2,000 people. Mayors, business leaders, social activists, and college students rose to their feet in thunderous applause as she received the National Anti-Corruption Award from the Governor of Illinois. It is an honor to recognize a woman who not only exposed corruption, but completely redefined our understanding of how prejudice and privilege fuel criminal systems, said the governor, handing her the gold plaque. Franklin Torres at that moment was in the federal penitentiary in Terre Haute serving a 15-year sentence for money laundering, racial discrimination, and criminal conspiracy. His desperate attempts to get a reduced sentence in exchange for information had completely failed. There was simply nothing he could offer that Katrina had not already meticulously documented. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had been granted full custody of their children and completely reversed the divorce settlement. Senator Richardson had been sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Judge Morrison lost his robe and faced prosecution for corruption. Congressman Walsh saw his political career destroyed and his assets confiscated. 15 influential businessmen in the city had lost business licenses, government contracts, and reputations built over decades. Alessandro had legitimately expanded his business, transforming Elegance into the first of a chain of restaurants certified by the Federal Bureau as corruption-free establishments. The brand had become synonymous with transparency and business ethics. Maria, the Mexican kitchen employee Franklin had humiliated, was now the regional manager of 3 locations in the chain. Jessica, the harassed sommelier, had opened her own wine consulting business with startup funding discreetly provided by Alessandro. Franklin in his cell received weekly letters from former clients suing him in civil court. Senator Richardson, Judge Morrison, all the politicians he considered his allies, now publicly blamed him for exposing their crimes. He had become the perfect scapegoat, the man everyone could hate without questioning the system that had allowed him to operate for so long. The waitress Franklin had looked down on for 2 years was now a speaker at the United Nations, an anti-corruption advisor to 3 European countries, and the author of the book Strategic Invisibility, which remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 15 consecutive weeks. While Franklin counted the days in his federal cell, Katrina woke up every morning knowing that she had turned her pain into power, her humiliation into inspiration, and her apparent defeat into the most satisfying victory possible. Not just against a prejudiced man, but against an entire system that allows people like him to thrive at the expense of those they consider inferior. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and justice, hit the subscribe button now. Don't miss our next one.